All right. Well, Will, thanks for joining me today. I was blessed to connect with Will on LinkedIn and just saw a little bit of his testimony, a little bit of his story, which he's going to share a little bit more about. So today we are talking about the topic of working through, continuing to stay faithful in your work during what's a life. A serious challenge, a trial, and that could come in various shapes and forms. But I'm going to let Will just dig into it a little bit more. So Will, let's start with just kind of your what's going on in your life right now, and then we can work back a little bit to your story with how you ended up where you are right now with work. But yeah, tell us what you're going through right now. What's been your life for the last year?
Yeah. And thanks, Landon. It's been nice getting to know you as well. Excited to continue our relationship and grow. Yeah. So for the last year, almost a year ago, so last December, I want to say it was the 16th, I found out I had stage 4 cancer, stage 4 specifically nasopharyngeal squamous cell carcinoma, with a bunch of other qualifiers behind it.
I am, you hear these terms a lot,
Yeah.
but I'm not super just what is stage 4?
Yeah,
What are the various stages?
that's a good question. So before that, I had no idea. I thought it had something to do with severity, right?
Right.
But the staging in particular has to do with how far it's spread from its original point of origin.
Okay.
So for me, it started off in my nasopharynx, which is like, I didn't even know what nasopharynx was, but it's like behind your nose in your head,
Okay.
right? The back
Yeah.
of your throat, like where your nasal passage goes down into your throat.
Okay.
And so it started there. If it stayed there, it'd be like phase 1, right? But it started there. It got into my lymph nodes, and then it got into my bones. And I didn't even know when I found it was already that widespread. So some people
Right.
hear squamous cell carcinoma, and that covers a wide variety of things. So it can be skin cancer, but it's also cancer of the surfaces of like your organs. So for me, yeah, it started off in my nasopharynx, got into my lymph nodes, and then it was in 8 vertebrae, is in my ribs, my sternum, my shoulder, my tailbone, and my hip. And the day before, I was actually out hunting for mule deer with my father-in-law, hiking around in the mountains. No idea.
And this was when, about a year ago?
Yeah, about a year ago. And I had symptoms that, looking back, I now know were cancer, but at the time I didn't know, and the doctor actually just thought it was allergies. I had blood in my phlegm. My ears they would plug and crackle and pop, and he thought it was inflammation from allergies, but it was actually stuff growing in my head.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so that day that I was out hunting, I noticed a new symptom where when I'd swallow, I'd have a sharp pain in my spine. And my wife is a nurse, and she said, "Well, that's pretty weird. I think you need to go get scanned." So I went in, and the doctor was a little bit dismissive. I'll give him some grace. Maybe he had a long day. Being a doctor, I'm sure, is difficult. But he kind of rolled his eyes and said, "Well, I don't think anything's wrong with you, but we can scan you if you want, but it's going to be expensive." And it's probably not the right thing, but I can have a little bit of a sharp attitude when people talk to me that way. So
Yeah.
I said, I got pretty good insurance, and we just had a baby, so our deductible's paid. Why don't you go ahead and do that? And I'm glad I didn't back off, because I almost kind of,
Yeah. I mean, it's
you know,
when a doctor's telling you not to
yeah.
look into something.
And I almost was like, well, what I said is true. I do have good insurance, but is it going to be, $1,000 or something? Do I need to do this? Anyway, we went through it with it, and he came back in, and he's a little bit more serious. And he looked at me, he said, I'm glad you came in. You have enlarged lymph nodes and you have lesions on your spine. And I didn't know what that meant. A lesion to me sounded like a sore on your skin, right?
Yep.
But come to find out, lesion is about as vague as abnormality. So it's not a super descriptive word, but it, in the context of cancer, pretty much means a tumor. So they scanned more of my body, and my wife was at home. I got her on the phone, each time. And so the first time I asked him, okay, well, it sounds like you have more work to do. What are you trying to rule out? And he said, we're trying to rule out lymphoma. And I said, okay, so cancer. But I wasn't sure. Even lymphoma, I didn't exactly know.
Yeah.
I guess that's cancer, right? That's cancer?
Yep.
And
I know it would have been the same.
Yeah.
I hear these terms, but I don't know what each means.
And my wife was on the phone, and so then we stopped. They scanned more of me, and I'm waiting in the room, and I could hear him. I could hear the doctor in the room next door. His office must have been in the next room over, and I didn't. He didn't realize he could hear me, or that I could hear him. And I hear him talking about lymphoma and hospital beds. And it kind of struck me like, he's talking about me. What are the chances there's another lymphoma guy walking around in the urgent care right now? And so I didn't call my wife and tell her until he came back in the room. And then I got her on the phone, and he said, well, again, I'm really glad you pushed us, because you have lesions in more of your bones. And to me, it was kind of like, man, that's what you always hear, like, oh, it got to his bones. That was it. And so it was frightening, but it didn't, my mind, I don't think I was in denial or anything. I don't know what that looks like, but I went to practical things. They were going to transport me to the hospital. So I don't know if it was in a van or an ambulance or what. But I said, well, I have the car seats, so I have to take the car back to my wife because she's not going to be able to do anything without the car seats. We have two cars, but only one of them fits all the kids. The other one's a little Civic that I use to commute. And he said, okay, well, we have a room for you at this local hospital, and you need to check yourself in tonight. You're able to move around right now, but you need to check yourself in tonight. So I went home, and my wife and I cried and prayed, and I said, we need to try and figure out where we want to go and stay. Like, what treatment center or hospital is the place that we actually want to go to, where it's all contained in one location. And so that wound up being the Mayo Clinic here locally in Phoenix. And so we went. Her parents came over. I'm grateful that they live nearby. They're really wonderful people, and they came over and watched the kids. And Rachel and I went, and I checked in to the Mayo Clinic through the ER, and I was there for 6 days while they poked and prodded me and did all the biopsies and scans and tests to figure out what it was. And it wasn't lymphoma; it was nasopharyngeal squamous cell carcinoma, stage 4 cancer. So stage 4 meaning it was spread all throughout my body. It was actually stage 4C. So each cancer might have its own different way of staging. So what that means? Of course, I had just the most advanced one, right? And it was a rough week. We had some really great doctors, just wonderful people that showed a lot of care for me. A few I'd mentioned, Dr. with the hematologist, so that's like the blood cancer doctor. She was really great, and but the day we found out it wasn't lymphoma was kind of emotional, because we had been told that lymphoma had a high success rate, had a high chance of being cured. So when we found out it wasn't lymphoma, we didn't know what it was at that point, but it wasn't lymphoma. And we kind of broke down in tears. And she was there with, that doctor was there with several residents, and all of them were crying, and pretty heavy. And this isn't tooting my horn, but I think it's more so God giving me kind of peace in that moment, where it came to mind to speak to them about the significance of the situation, about life, and about the importance of seeking the Lord, and kind of went through Genesis, the fall and redemption with them. And it was really neat because, well, I used to always joke with the doctors, and I still do a little bit, like, hey, one of the benefits of having cancer is you have to listen to me. And I joke, because I'm like, and you think in your head, like, oh, he's got cancer. And then they would, and it worked out that way. And so, but it was neat, because the next day she came back and shared that she was actually a believer. And several other doctors, Dr. Walker, Dr. Co. Dr. Co, he was my radiation oncologist. He actually gave me his personal number, and would get on the phone with me and answer my questions. Dr. Walker was really great too. I remember he did a biopsy. So they put these long needle nose pliers up my nose and then ripped off a piece of tissue from the back of my throat. It was not fun. And the nurse said, I'll bring the sample up to the lab. And he said, no, I'm going to walk it up myself. I'm going to put the fear of God in him. And he called me, not exaggerating, less than 15 minutes later. And he had pushed him to put it under a microscope and have it tested and have a preliminary look at it to see whether it matched the other samples, and it did. But just, above and beyond. So to kind of expedite the story, I went through, I had a major hip surgery. I have a big titanium rod in my hip. They did radiation to kill the tumor. The biggest tumor was in my hip, and they did radiation there to kill it after the surgery, and the tumor died, and the bone filled back in. So I have range of motion. I can run and jump. I was in a wheelchair for a little while, and now my mobility's all the way back. I did 5 months of treatment of chemo, 2 different types of chemo and immunotherapy. And praise God, we got a reprieve after 5 months, where I got a scan that showed no sign of active disease. I had 2 scans like that. The second one had some activity in a lymph node, but it wasn't alarming to them. Now, it probably was cancer, because just last week I got another scan that the cancer returned. So now I have the cancer's come back to my lymph nodes, or maybe it never died. That's something you find out about cancers. They can only scan it and find it down to a certain size.
Okay.
And below that size, they can't see it. It doesn't mean it's gone.
Yeah.
So it's back in a few lymph nodes, and then in my tailbone. So we're currently looking for other treatments. We did some, other, conventional and more integrative treatments along the way. Trying to find all the sources of insight out there that we can use.
Yeah. Well, obviously, so many questions I could stop and ask right here, and really appreciate you just sharing all that. And want to get back to kind of that response and what that's been like for you guys. I'm gonna pause right there, and we'll get back there. I want to fill in a little bit of the background on what you do for work, and then I want to hear about just kind of the process of responding to all that and working through all that. And just generally, and then obviously with our topic today, I want to hear how that's related
Yeah,
how that's impacted your work, how you've worked through that.
totally.
Because well, I want to hear a little bit about the details of it, but you have continued to just stay faithful in your job through all that. So just start with a little bit of background on your work.
Yeah.
Tell us, what you do, what you do generally, what line of work you're in, how you got there, what you
Yeah.
like about what you're doing, what your vocation looked like over the years.
Yeah. So I've been in a number of different areas over the years. Currently, I'm a project manager, mostly in the process improvement space, in kind of the corporate world.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
process improvement can cover a wide range, right?
Yeah.
We're mostly related, or what I do is mostly related to services. So, some call center stuff and like back office processing in terms of process improvement. So
Yeah.
an area I'm kind of passionate about is like error proofing. So in lean management, they like to throw around Japanese words because a lot of the development of lean management came out of Japan. They call it poka-yoke. But it's like error proofing. So my favorite example from kind of food services is like if you go, I don't know, do they have In-N-Out in Washington? I'm from Washington, but I haven't been
No.
back in a while.
No, we do not.
Yeah.
It's closest is in Oregon, I think.
Okay. So one of the classic examples is, or one that I like because it illustrates it well, is people were throwing away their trays at In-N-Out all the time, throwing them in the trash. And then they put a sign up and people still threw it in the trash and didn't read the sign. And then the solution to error-proof it is they made the hole for the trash too small for the tray.
Yeah.
Right? So no one could do it even if you wanted to. So that's the kind of thing, is that we're looking for frequent defects that occur and then getting as close to an error-proofing solution as we can. It's not always possible, but, less error-proof would be like pre-filling a form, right? So you're in the mortgage world, you probably have DocuSign. Or IntelliDocs, right, where you can like fill out.
Yeah.
You can pre-fill things. So there's kind of a spectrum there, but that's the idea.
So that's a wide range. Are you like a kind of a third party consulting service? Is that?
I am kind of a consultant, but I'm embedded in the business that I work for.
Okay.
And I'm unable to be too specific about the company or anything like that, but it's there's a component of data analysis. There's a component of solutioning and problem solving. Yeah. So it's interesting. I kind of ran the gamut. So I've done all different things I am still young, but when I was younger, when I was first in the workforce, I did a lot of sales, and some service. After college, I started my career kind of in sales, business development, and then moved into people leadership for a number of years. And I found myself gravitating towards, I like leading teams, but it depends on the context. And I'm more interested in leading teams with stakeholders from different groups to solve a problem than I am being a day-to-day leader that's, approving timesheets and stuff like that, right?
Sure.
Sure. And so that's where I kind of gravitated towards the project management space, is recognizing that about myself, that's something I always wanted, or in every role, I found myself trying to improve the way we did things.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you work from home?
Mostly, it is. I do have a hybrid type role, so I spend some time in the office, and I'm grateful to have the ability to work from home, particularly through my illness. So that's been a blessing.
Okay. So, and then you also have something you're working on the side.
Yeah.
Inspections.
yeah, so I opened up a home inspection company called Vera Home Inspections. So with the Vera name being related to truth, I thought that was a good name. And around here in Arizona, you guys, maybe you have an equivalent in Washington. I'm trying to think of what it would be. Maybe there's a lot.
They're a pretty common like town name or
No. What I was saying is I was trying to avoid the common type name. So like in Arizona, it's all like, desert cactus home inspections,
see.
Yep.
Yeah.
Valley of the Sun home inspections, right? So I wanted to separate myself a little bit.
Yeah.
Where the name stuck out, right? And depending how we grew and things like that. So I've been working on that for some time as a supplemental thing on the side. And I when I was diagnosed, I was actually worried that I'd have to shut it down because there's some overhead. And praise God, I was able to meet someone who was a home inspector, and we kind of negotiated a deal where he came to work for me as a contractor, and brought in just enough business while I wasn't working, because I took leave from my main job and I wasn't able to do home inspections. Brought in just enough business to keep the lights on. So as my health's been coming back, I'm hopefully getting closer to going live with that in the next few weeks or month or so, depending, of course, on what comes of the new treatment.
Yeah. So workflow, when you over the past year as well, you decided, which your wife was a nurse, but you decided to, in order to be able to keep her home with the kids, you were gonna take on a little more work. Is that part of what went into the?
That was part of the home inspection idea.
Yeah.
She stopped working prior to me having cancer with our second baby. So we're on baby number 3. She's began working from home, or not working from home. She stopped working as a nurse probably 3 years ago, close to 3 years ago.
Okay.
And a lot of things went into that. A desire to homeschool our kids, whether, there's sacrifice that goes into that. And hopefully we'll be able to continue that. I think there are multiple ways that you can faithfully educate your kids. It doesn't have to be homeschool, but that's what we've gone with for now. I'm just not wanting to entrust the raising of our kids to other people is important to us. So I've always wanted to do that, and we've kind of organized our lives in a way where that was more possible. We try not to keep any debt besides our mortgage. Our cars are paid off and whatnot. And so we've done that for a while, but as you know, the last few years have gotten more expensive and crazy. So the home inspection thing was going to be a real benefit there.
So have you been able to, what have hours looked like with, I don't know how consuming treatment was. I don't know what flexibility you have. What, just generally speaking, what were your hours like in terms of being able to stay on the job? What kind of time off did you get there?
I'm really grateful. I was able to take time off for the first 5-6 months of treatment, which was a huge blessing. Some people work through it, and I admire them. I don't know how they do it. I mean, everyone is affected differently, right?
Sure.
I'm finding out, but chemo's no joke. No fun. Lost a lot of hair, lost a lot of weight. But since then, coming back, I work full time in that position.
Okay, so you came back after the kind of all clear.
Yeah, after the all clear, after I was done with chemotherapy.
Okay.
Got it. And I was still on immunotherapy. Still am on immunotherapy, but I have a feeling they're going to change it. The idea is if it
Yeah.
If it comes back, then whatever you were doing wasn't working.
Sure. Yep. Yep. So then, I mean, but that whole time, I mean, you knew you'd be checking back in,
Yep.
end of this year, or I don't know what
Yeah.
the plan was, but you knew this isn't necessarily over. It may be, it may not be.
It was either going to go well and I'd return to
Right.
work, or it wasn't. And then we'd have to make a choice.
Right. And so, you just went back in, like you mentioned, but that 5-6 month window where you were back to work, is that about what it was?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. After that, then I went back to work, and I've been working ever since.
Yeah. How's that time been where it seems like it'd be, I mean, for me, especially when you're working from home, when it's pretty independent,
Yeah.
motivation's a big thing.
Yeah.
Staying faithful, staying motivated in what's in front of you is a big thing. And something as little as, our schedule got bumped, or
Yeah.
we're dealing with something at the house, or something as little as that messes with my motivation on a daily
Yeah.
basis. Makes it difficult. It makes it an obstacle that I'm going to have to stay faithful through for my work. What's that window been like for you, where, okay, it's been kind of choppy, you didn't work for the last 5-6 months.
Yeah.
You've got different things on the radar now as far as what you're trying to do. How's the motivation battle been for you as far as your work?
I'll be honest, it's challenging. So one of the thoughts that or at least that I wrestled with going with cancer or dealing with the cancer is, that it's all vanity, right? It's all in vain. Why am I going to worry about this? Why am I going to deal with this? Why am I going to try hard if I'm just going to die in a few months? So it's definitely a wrestling. I'd say it's something I probably struggled with my whole life. I wish I could say I was stronger in that area. It's interesting how, if it's something that I am passionate about and interested in, I can find tons of energy. And if it's not that, if it's more monotonous in my mind, it can be harder to find that motivation.
Definitely.
And I think the challenge there is we have a moral requirement to work hard, right? At whatever it is we're doing, and monotony isn't an excuse,
right,
for that. So I think knowing that is one motivation, right? Knowing that the Lord calls us to that, knowing you need to provide for your family. I think in the short term, tactical tip would be, there's all kinds of different tools out there, but time boxing, like, even if that's the thing, right? If you're self-directed in your work, it can be easy to procrastinate. So time boxing can be a big thing. Like, let me allocate, different periods of time to certain bodies of work and hold myself to that.
Yeah. Seems like that becomes more important the less motivated you are.
Yeah, definitely. And because you can get a lot done. I think that's probably the other thing. Job talked about his greatest fear coming true, and it was kind of losing his family and his wealth. And I think that's a great, a worse fear than what I'm about to describe. But the fear that I've often had in my mind throughout my life, and it shouldn't necessarily be this way, is that I'd reach the end of my life having not been as faithful as I should have been, or not accomplishing the things that I should have, not having used my talents well. And I feel like that now. I'm not dwelling on it in a sense, I think it's right to grieve your sin, but it's not we're forgiven as well. I don't think it is good to necessarily wallow in it either. But life is short. We're reminded of that often in Scripture, and I would encourage everyone to keep that in mind. Even if you live to be 120 years old, you talk to that person that's 120, they'll probably tell you life went pretty quick.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a great reminder when considering the thing that you spend the
majority of your week
chunk of your time doing, are you just doing it because you have to? Are you just doing it because it pays the bills? And not to say it needs to be, if you feel that way, then you need to find something that doesn't make you feel. More to say, you're doing this thing. You're then called to, therefore, do it well, do it faithfully, do it
unto the Lord.
Give yourself entirely unto the Lord. Whatever the thing is, whether it's that kind of thing that you said that brings out your energy. And maybe even if you think, okay, I'm only doing this for the next year, that year is the time frame that you have to be faithful in. And I'm talking to myself. This is a really good just reminder for me. So
I think there's another sense in which the short time's motivating you to be more ambitious, right? Because what do you got to lose, sort of thing. And hopefully you can harness that. I think if, obviously if you can find an area that you're talented in and passionate about, you'll be really good. But that's not what happens in everyone's life. So if that doesn't happen, it's not just follow your heart to all, your heart is wicked. Your heart is not, it's, if you can find, that's one of my motivations with my kids, right? If I can help them discover where their talents are and develop those, and they can align a vocation with those, I think that can be really a powerful thing. But to your point, you don't give up or keep hunting around for that. Sometimes you just gotta support your family and do the work that's been put in front of you, And maybe you don't have a very glamorous talent.
What's been an area that you've noticed has been an area of change for you? Some of the biggest changes you've noticed in yourself since the original diagnosis, whether that's daily habits, personality, challenges that you're thinking through, strengths that you've developed. What's been an area of major change?
That's a hard question. I know people have pointed things out to me that I don't necessarily see in myself. Like my wife's pointed out, and my boldness and witnessing and whatnot. And I think I've always been outspoken, for right or wrong, right? We have mixed motives. So, there's times where I talk a lot and I'm not a pushover. So is it, always for the Lord, or is it, because I just have an attitude where I want to be right? I think during this, it's, my witness has definitely come out in a more pointed way.
Why do you think that is? What's the thought process?
Well, I think there's someone shared a talk, I forget who it was, but if we believe Christianity is true, which I think we all do, or you and I do, that would have significance that should have significance on the way we live, right? So
the Lewis quote you're thinking of?
No, well, I'm sure a lot of people have quoted similar things. There was a talk, and I forget who it was. I don't think it was C.S. Lewis, but I'm sure he said something similar. But yeah, if you believe it's true, You're going to share it with everyone. If you believe it's life and death that we're dealing with, then you're going to share it with everyone, right? Loved ones and whoever, like awkwardness or whatever other obstacles get in our way, seem kind of silly as excuses for not sharing the gospel, for not talking about God, right?
Yeah.
And so, and I joke about it.
Things become more important. The less important become less important.
And I joke about, you know, when you have cancer, people listen to you, but it's kind of true. And so it's kind of an opportunity. There have been so many people I've met that I never would have met if I didn't have cancer, other patients, doctors. Like I met you on LinkedIn. I never was a social media guy whatsoever. And I had this one LinkedIn post. It was probably the first time I ever even put anything on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But I didn't know. I was trying to tell all my work, extended network, that what had been going on, why I wasn't around, and praising God that I had the clean scan. And that post got like 2 million impressions and like 30-some thousand likes and comments and everything else.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, well, I knew I wanted to use this as a way to witness. I didn't know what that would look like, but maybe I need to, maybe this is an opportunity I need to lean into. Right. So LinkedIn, of all places, I started, you know, posting things, and my wife and I had made a YouTube channel, and that we're trying to grow now. And I wouldn't have done that before. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I'm talented in that way, but I have that opportunity. Sure. I do talk a lot, and so that used to annoy me. I was annoyed with myself, you know. But I think there is something about that personality that, you know, maybe other people wouldn't do that, and so they wouldn't speak up in certain instances just based on their own personality. Yeah. And so maybe, you know, me being talkative is helpful for that kind of thing. Otherwise, I'd say it's been a mixed bag. You know, I've had times where I handled things really well, and I've had times where I've been very sinful, right? Anxious and angry. I have a tendency towards anger that I wrestle with and struggle with. And so, very mixed. I think the biggest thing was the witness, and then it forced me to push into, I've always struggled with assurance of salvation as well. Having grown up with more of a charismatic background than what now I'm on the reform side of the world. And so growing up believing you could lose your salvation, believing, you know, Jesus is coming in any second, and you know, the kind of pre-mill view, was terrifying, right? And so my views changed, but it shifted from you're not really saved to maybe you're not repentant.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if
the category that you're in.
Yeah, that was my new way of saying I wasn't saved. Like, if you repeat habitual sins, to, you know, at what point is that, like, not that you've lost your salvation, but evidence that you're not repentant, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I have a question on that. I mean, you mentioned it's been kind of mixed in terms of peace anxiety, and I'm going to start to wrap up here. I want to keep your time short and contain things here, but I want to wrap up with a question on, you know, it's just been kind of bring us up to speed on where you're at. What's been the mix of moments of peace, moments of anxiety, moments of faith, moments of fear? Because, you know, obviously you can portray one persona and you know, publicly portray one persona of what's going on. That's not a real reflection of what's going on internally. Obviously you could do that. But it's very hard to assume, it's very hard to do that when the stakes are as high as they are, and, you know, it's not really a game of showing one thing. It's, you know, every little feeling is a massive feeling, I would
Yeah.
guess, at this point. But at this point, with where you're at with, new PET scan showing cancer again, your testimony has been what I would think every Christian's testimony, every Christian would want their testimony to be of, this is hard, but it's in God's hands, and we trust that.
Yeah.
So what's been the mix for you, and what challenges do you expect going forward, and how do you expect to handle those?
Yeah. Praise God, I haven't gone into the pit since the cancer returned. So I haven't, it's not that I'm not sad. The most difficult thing I've shared a number of times is I have 3 young kids, and the oldest is 5. So she, if she remembers me, if I die and she remembers me, it'll be a vague memory. The others probably wouldn't remember me. And that's a hard thought. But you can't get stuck in the sentimentality of it. Not that it's wrong completely, but that's not where it ends, right? I can't just sit there and think about how sad my kids won't remember me. Like, we know the Lord is faithful. We know he's good. So whatever he uses it for is good. And that is prior to, or more basic than anything else that I'm going through, right? Right? One of God's attributes is his goodness. And that is fundamental to anything else he's done in creation, right? He's timeless, eternal, and unchangeable in that. And so there's nothing, we shouldn't doubt that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so that doesn't mean it's easy. And I think that really becomes where it's the objects of your faith are the promises and invisible things of God, right? So faith is contrasted with sight, not reason, not understanding it. It's contrasted with understanding in the popular culture, faith versus reason, faith versus science, faith versus whatever. Well, no, faith it has to do with the unseen, but because God is a spirit, right? We haven't seen him. There's hope that we have in the promises that he's given us. And so it's not contrary to our understanding. The more we grow in our understanding, the more our faith is deepened. And so I think something like this pushes you to a point where that's all you have. It's not just faith meaning believe harder, meaning, well, this seems like a nicer outcome than other ones, so I'm just going to saturate my mind with that thought.
Yeah.
Right? No, the reality is, like, if I die, my suffering will be removed right away. I'll be watching and waiting, right? It's not all about die and go to heaven. It is that, right? My sin is removed and we're in our intermediary state, not to get too heady, but I don't know exactly what that'll be like. I won't have my body, right? And until the end, till death is removed. So I won't be suffering. I will be learning a lot in a short order because I won't have the obstacle of sin. But my family is going to suffer. They're separated from me. They don't have that reality yet. They're still suffering with the sin in the world, with the curse. My kids will be raised, I don't know whether they'll have someone to take my place or not, I hope that they would. That's a weird thought. That's where you could get stuck in the sentimentality of it, right? I don't want someone else to raise my kids. Well, no, I want what's best for my kids in the Lord's eyes.
Amen.
So I know I'm kind of run on in this answer, but that's all we can hold on to. I don't think it's foolish. I don't think it's the opiate of the masses. I don't think it's I think it's knowing,
more real.
it's knowing what's true, and there's not anything else I can find comfort in. I do hope that I am healed. I would like to live longer. But I think it gives you certain boldness that might sound crazy to someone who's not facing it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Amen. Praise God for that faith, for that testimony. Will, thanks so much for sharing about it. Before we wrap up, is there a place where anyone who's listening can follow your story, see what's going on with you guys?
Yeah, I'll just share the link with you. We got probably
Yeah, I can throw that in the description.
I have some different social media. We have our YouTube channel, which is called the Monohorn Family. So I joked with my daughter when she was like 2. I think we were at Costco, and there was a unicorn, and I jokingly told her that unicorns were called monohorns, right? Like one horn. And right away I told her, no, I'm just kidding. They're called unicorns. And well, she internalized that like immediately. And it's kind of funny because like we don't even teach her Santa Claus is real, right? We'll tell her the story, but we don't try to fool them that Santa Claus is coming or something like that. No offense to folks if they do, I guess. But it's stuck, and she knows they're called monohorn. She knows everyone else calls them unicorns. I mean,
that's great.
But we call them monohorns. So I just thought it was kind of cute. Good name.
That's awesome.
No one knows what it means till they hear the story. And so we have that Monohorn Family YouTube channel, and then
got it.
We have a Caring Bridge, which is like a blog site for people with terminal illnesses that I can share.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'll put those in the description. Will, thanks again for your time and for sharing your story and your faith, Sam.
Thank you.